when you have your own stage, like people just see you differently because everybody who does their own events and understands the energy and the effort that goes into it, understands that capacity of it. Two, hosting your own event puts you at a whole nother echelon of expertise. And then it also gets you more stages and more opportunities. What we realized when we went through the transition of mainly in person to completely virtual is that one, events will never die.
All right, Shay, I am so excited to have you here. And I know we've had the opportunity to collaborate for quite a few years. I know you've supported us a lot, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But for anyone who's listening, I would love for you to give maybe a little bit of background about you and your business and who really you guys focus on supporting.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. So background on me, I've been playing in this arena for over 10 years. That's crazy to say, but yes, it's been past 10 years. Yeah. Kind of started out one of those things you kind of fall into. I was speaking on a stage because a stage is one of the fastest ways to grow your business, either creating your own or being on somebody else's. And that's what I was doing. It was like a multi-speaker event. We're kind of like changing microphones back and forth. And I was like, hey, dude, don't go spitting on my mic. It was like, oh my God, you're funny. Who are you? Right? And turns out he was the head of education for Dr. Oz's nonprofit. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I met his sister Saval at Maria Shriver's women's conference when she was the first lady of California. And he's like, hold on. Saval's best friends with our CEO and we're doing a women's conference. You should help us. And I went, okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that was my first official gig as an associate producer in charge of over 70 speakers and 100 volunteers.
What a way to jump into it.
Yeah. That's one of those moments where you go, just say yes and figure it out. Like, I didn't know how much to charge. I didn't know what I needed to do. I had, I've been a part of events. I'd been on teams of events. I volunteered. Like, I had frameworks and things that worked and I saw behind the scenes. But that was my first time actually like leading a bunch of people for an event.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. What a small world, right? Jeez.
Right? Just kind of like in nowhere land of like Sacramento, California, and you're like, I didn't even know Dr. Oz's nonprofit was housed here, they've since moved on. I think they've moved to Texas or something now. But yeah, crazy how the universe just shows up and goes, hey, here you go. This is the path you get to be on now.
Amazing. And what a kickstart. So now, really, you've taken that as a huge event to kick things off. And now you're supporting essentially a lot of people who are trying to put on their own events.
Exactly. Yeah. Speakers, coaches, experts, thought leaders, anybody really with a high ticket offer that is looking to go from like one-on-one conversations to one-to-many, to really leverage what it is that they're doing in their business and be able to impact more people all at once.
Yeah. And I know for sure, I don't even remember how we got connected, to be honest. I can't remember. So I remember we just launched our book, and I know we had talked about creating a program and going, how do we get this out to the most amount of people? We got an intro to you, and it was a huge game changer to think of putting on an event. And I know we'll talk about our collaboration on those events in a few minutes, but man, I remember the idea of getting on stage at my own event, because I've been on stage at many other ones, but on my own. And for a day, and I think maybe we did a day the first year and maybe 3 days the next year, but being on for a day was terrifying and something that I am so grateful I did, because I know without question it has changed my approach to taking on challenging situations and seeing and knowing the growth that can happen in that. And I know for sure as a speaker that experience changed everything for me.
The whole trajectory of your business changed for a number of different reasons, right? Like, one, you're being seen as a different type of expert when you have your own stage. Like, people just see you differently because everybody who does their own events and understands the energy and the effort that goes into it understands that capacity of it. Two, hosting your own event puts you at a whole nother echelon of expertise. And then it also gets you more stages and more opportunities.
For sure. And that experience, again, something that I will never forget. And in fact, I think, if I remember this correctly, I think the first year we did it, I had my kids on there too. I told them, no, you come out of school, we're going to teach you some stuff today. And what a cool experience for that. They were just little babies at the time.
Now we're talking about how old they are. Oh my gosh.
I know. I was just saying to Shay, my son's turning 16 here in a couple months, and it's terrifying. But yeah, we won't go down that path because, like I said, I'm not crying, you're crying, it's fine. So explain to me, because, you just kind of said, hey, I've been behind the scenes. I get this huge opportunity to take on this massive experience with 70 plus speakers. And I would say, well, geez, Shay, I've been part of quite a few events too, including my own. I would never take that on. That is not something that I would be capable of doing. I don't have your skill set. So tell me a little bit about what goes into pulling off a successful event.
Yeah, a lot of things. A lot, like, so if I gave you like the task list of everything, you would probably be like, no, I'm good. I don't need to do that.
I do say that, and that's why we work together.
Yeah, I mean, my team will spend, 100 plus hours just on the things that they're doing to get an event up and running. So there's a lot that goes into it from, are we doing it in person? Are we doing it virtual? How many people? What is the experience? What are we moving them into? So if I were to break it down kind of into a framework, I would want to start with, what is the vision? What is the purpose and intention of the event? What are they walking away with? Whether or not they do business with you, what are they walking away with? What is the audience getting out of it, right? And I want to know what your vision is. What is your outcome? What are we driving them to? What is the offer? Because you should always have an offer at every single event that you're doing, even if it's a fulfillment event, meaning like it's an event that you do with your current clients. That's also an event. You have podcasts, those are events, webinars, those are all different types of events. What is the place that we're driving them to? And then from there, we reverse engineer everything, right? And that's where it really kind of starts to get into the nitty gritties of like, okay, so you want to move them into this program. Awesome. What's the price point? How many times have you done it before? Do you have success? Do you have testimonials out of it? We want to make sure that there's proof of concept. So then when we leverage it out and scale it out, it actually will work. You've got proof of concept, right? And then what is the experience? What are they getting out of it? How are we moving them into it? And that's going to determine how we adjust the agenda or the run of show, how we fill the event in the first place, what team do we need, what AV do we need. So it all goes back to, what is the purpose and intention? What is the goal?
Oh, you mean you just don't show up and speak in front of a camera or on a stage? People don't just show up?
Yeah. No, we spend 3+ months at least ahead of time planning your events. And if we have more time, even better.
Yeah. And we were talking just before we hopped on here about, you've even dove in even earlier on to help people set up their marketing to make sure that they're attracting the right people to attend their events, so that essentially from start to finish, any of the energy that's flowing through is capturing the most interest and likely being monetized in the best way from start to finish as well. So that is pretty cool. And even, the marketing side of things, I know that maybe is something you've been doing a long time, but now jumping in and supporting clients. So where do you take that back to, and where do you start with that with new experiences now?
Yeah. So what I was noticing is people would come to me and they go, oh, I want to do an event. I'm like, great, tell me about it, right? And then we start to get into it, and the marketing team and the sales team and the video, the visuals, everything is not matching up. And it's kind of like driving the wrong people to who we need to be supporting. And so I wanted to go into it more and actually dive into that reverse engineer part. So we've taken our programs, our clients' programs, and broken them down. So let's say you've got 6 modules. Within each module, what is the purpose and intention of that? What are they getting out of it? breaking it down to the nuance there. And then that literally gives you the content that you're going to be doing on your webinar, because that leads into your offer, not just a random, hey, this sounds like a good idea to do a webinar on. No, it actually still leads back into your offer. It's a part of your offer, right? Your big ticket offer, your high ticket. And then from there, we know what we're marketing to get to that webinar or that masterclass, to then offer a ticket, to then show up to the event. So it's taking that and really deconstructing it and then putting it into the marketing plan ahead of time that makes it so it flows and cascades down a lot easier.
100%. And you know what? I remember it's bringing me flashbacks to the first time I think we started having a conversation about this for one of our events. And I remember this document that you brought out where it was like, okay, well, where are we getting all of the attendees from? And I remember going, well, this is interesting. I didn't really think about the sophistication level of this, but looking at your networks, looking at your existing clients, looking at your prospects, paid marketing, whatever that plan looks like, you have to have one, right? And
it's broken down, right? So if you say your goal is 50 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, how in the world are those people actually going to show up and where are they coming from? So that's where our ticket map comes in, because it's like, okay, I'm going to do this speaking gig. I know that there's going to be 50 people in the room that are my ideal audience. I know that when I do a speaking gig, 20% of the room would convert into, a paid offer of mine, or 50% of the room would say yes to my lead magnet, my free lead magnet, or come into a webinar, right? And then from there, we can just map out the numbers to say, this is how we're going to sell all of these tickets. And if our goal is 50, we know we have to sell like 60 or 70 of them, because not all of them will show up, right? So we're also taking into account the show rate and the stay rate and where they're coming from and how many layers do we have to do to actually hit your numbers to then support the event to hit the end goal, which we started with.
Yeah. And it, again, way more math involved in it. And of course, as an accountant, I'm not afraid of math, but when you started to put it all together, we went, okay, because I remember the one event we had, I think we had 1,000 registrants, and it was like, okay, well, what does 1,000 registrants turn into? The intention, I believe, was like 50% of those online registrants would show. So continuing to work on that and then fine tuning it to say, well, if you want more registrants to show up, here are the marketing things you need to do to get them to show up. And there's so much that goes into it. And I remember my head spinning a little bit the first time. And as a speaker for the day, all I'm worried about is I can't impact any of the people that have decided not to show up, but here's my group and my audience, and how do I keep them all day? And so I felt like that was on me 100%, but that was such a small realm of everything else that was going on. And I, again, super grateful that you and your team were in there supporting us, because all I had to do was show up and do my thing. And that was the best part, because I know if you guys weren't there supporting everything else, the cameras, the mics, the music, the people walking in and off stage, the Zoom channels, like everything that was going in there, all I had to do was do my thing, and, it wouldn't have worked otherwise. So you guys are incredible.
And that's where we want you to stay. Thank you. But I don't want you playing in my sandbox, right? Because your genius is the one on stage, is delivering the content, is creating the gap to show them how to get them from where they are to where they need to be. And our offer fills that gap, right? So that's where I need you to stay. That's your genius. Everything else behind the scenes, I can lead the team to move forward. And to be honest, like, a lot of people don't know when things go wrong behind the scenes. Like, I'm thinking of one of my clients last year who didn't realize what was happening with his team behind the scenes that I was just handling until I think when we were doing our wrap-up meeting. And he was like, why didn't you tell me? I was like, because you didn't need to know. It wasn't going to support you in what you were doing. It would actually take you out of your zone of genius. And I had it handled, and it worked out, and it was fine. And he's like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I was like, yeah.
Yes. I think if I remember correctly, I believe there was one day that I showed up without shoes. I don't remember how that happened, but I think I had some running shoes on. I was like, oh, I don't think I wore any other shoes, and I think I was dressed to not wear running shoes. So you never know what's going to happen, but hey, guess what? I had some shoes that I was able to wear, and we made it work.
Everything is figure-outable in our world. Everything is figure-outable. How can we make this happen? Yes, because something will happen at every single event. Something will happen. Now, we do our best to plan as much as we possibly can, but we also know that an event is kind of like its own living, breathing entity. And based on who shows up, then we're going to adjust slightly, right? Because if you notice up on stage that they're not leaning into something or they're not getting it and we need to spend more time, that's going to adjust our agenda or run a show. But that's fine, right? We can do that in the moment in order to best serve the audience. And when you need shoes, then we find you shoes.
Yeah, and it's funny even starting to understand a little bit about some of the terminology, like the voice of God. I was like, what is the voice of God? And all of a sudden you hear this voice come over and talk to everyone, and you're like, that's it. It's God. So interesting. So I would love to hear, because I know, with technology and, the evolution and learning of events going online quite a few years ago, but the predominant events being online, or maybe even more of a movement there to hybrid events, to in-person events. What is the newest approach to events? And I know you're going to probably say it depends on what your outcome is, but what are some of the tools and effective ways that people can make their event a great success, or things that they should be thinking of?
Well, so what we realized when we went through the transition of mainly in person to completely virtual is that one, events will never die. And two, what we do in events, 80% of what we do is the same, 20% changes. And that's the technology and that's the way we deliver it, right? So when we went virtual, we still needed to have a way of connecting people. And so we literally just kind of took, the table discussions and we put them into breakout rooms. Same thing when you're in virtual, you have to have that engagement. You have to have that connection. So you have the call and repeat back. Instead of them verbalizing it, they're putting it into chat, right? So the essence of an event is the same regardless of how you're going to do it. When you move into hybrid, one, I don't recommend hybrid for many people. It is literally, for my event hosts like yourself, it's a split of brain. You have to talk to both audiences, and it is not the easiest thing. What tends to happen is you end up having one audience become like the ugly stepchild, and you just kind of forget about them, right? And so you really have to practice it in order to make it work. Now, when we've done hybrid for my clients, we do it in a way that essentially we're running two events. I've got the in-person team, I've got the virtual team. They're pulling people up virtually. They're putting them up on the screen. I've got extra equipment. I've got a bunch of different things. So to do it right, you need it to think about it as two events, because then both are supporting. When you're an in-person event, your breaks are going to be 20, 30 minutes. When you're in a virtual, your breaks are probably 10, 15 minutes. So what do you do with that 15-minute gap? We're doing behind the scenes. We're bringing up people that were on the main stage and pulling them up onto the virtual stage and interviewing them. We're taking the camera and coming behind the curtain and interviewing the team or interviewing the actual event host, right? So we're being innovative in those pieces, which you can do in any of your events. People love seeing behind the scenes. So if you can capture that and include it into your event, even if it's just a recap of the day prior, you play it the next morning, those are so amazing because then they get to see themselves. Capture as many of the audience members as you possibly can, will engage them to stay with you, right? So those are like not necessarily tools, but those are opportunities that I suggest that you keep in mind when you're designing your event. If you're looking for like an actual tool, one of my clients is using live polling. And you can do this virtually or you can do it in person, right? So I think the company's called Poll Everywhere. And so you literally just, type in whatever it is going to be. throw it up. They can take a screenshot of the QR code and enter the poll, and bam, you've got feedback right then and there. Works on both virtual and in person. So fun things to do. It's more on the engagement side than anything else. I mean, of course, you can use your chat GPTs and all that kind of stuff too to get your marketing language, or at least get you started, your brain started. But really the tools I'm looking for now is how do I create more engagement to keep people with us, because we're spending 3 days together. We're spending a whole day together, and time is money. So we need to make it valuable for them, and knowing what that is so that they stay with us.
See, now you started that off and said, I don't necessarily recommend hybrid events. And now I think you sold me where I'm like, oh, a hybrid event sounds so cool. I want to do the behind the scenes.
It's just, I mean, you've got a bigger team now, so we could absolutely, handle it. When you have a smaller team, it's a little more difficult, but absolutely, your team can handle it now, and it would be epic, but it is 2 of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's put that one on the proposed calendar. No dates yet, but we'll work on that. No, that's so cool. And I know I remember the first time that we did the event, and as a speaker, staring at a camera lens for like 8 hours when I could see all the people on the Zoom screens, and you're like, but you can't look at the people because that's not looking at them. Looking at the camera is looking at them, and you go, oh yeah, this is interesting. As soon as you start going, hi everybody, they feel like you're looking away, and it's very interesting. And you're right with the engagement and the engagement in chat and asking questions and asking people to participate and getting up and moving around and everything. Do you find now with like the demand for events that it's shifting back to in person, or do you find that it's still pushing online because it's so easy to attend?
Yeah, no, I am seeing a shift back to in person. It's an ever-changing market, right? So people want to be in person. They want to like high five and hugs and, see you and communicate with you. The thing that we kind of missed on the virtual side is the meeting after the meeting, which happens at the bar, right? It happens at the lunches. It's like those engagements, especially as you get more and more higher level kind of mastermind kind of people, they want the at the bar, hanging out, meeting, let's create a deal, let's create a joint venture partner from that event. And they could walk away not only with business, they could walk away with joining a new program or mastermind and a joint venture partner all in 3 days, right? So it's absolutely huge. The thing I'm running into right now is the hotels. So I am in crazy negotiation with hotels right now because they are not wanting to budge. So if you were to walk off the street and walk into a hotel and say, I want to do an event for 100 people, give me a contract. And they'd be like, okay, great, here. It is not in your best interest. They don't have the clauses. They don't have the restrictions. They don't ask for, you don't know what to ask for. And so what we're doing is in our negotiations, pulling out some of their clauses. So their standard agreement one of my clients, their standard agreement was going to impact them by having an additional $15,000 they would have had to have paid prior to the event starting. Well, that's a clause that we took out. Their team didn't look at it. The hotel team didn't look. They're just like, oh yeah, you owe us 15. And they're like, Shay, I don't think we owe. I was like, no, you don't. We took it out. So we saved our client $15,000 right there before the event even started because those crazy little agreements are in there that you don't know to pull out, right? So that's something to be aware of when you are going into hotel negotiations. Yeah, is they are trying to recoup monies from the pandemic and they haven't hired a bunch of people back yet, and they're trying to hold the line as much as possible. So we'll probably start to see a shift again where people go, well, I don't want to play with the hotels, but I still want to do in person. Great. Brenda Bouchard is out there doing things in theaters, right? You can get creative with where you hold your event.
Yeah, 100%. And some of the theaters look pretty cool too, right? There's some pretty amazing venues out there that, and I know we were chatting about it before, but my good friend Giovanni, always seems to have this talent of finding the most unique spaces that I didn't even know existed. And I don't know, I feel like he does it full time. He's just constantly roaming the streets looking for these different unique places, but amazing. So tell me, I know you've had the opportunity to work with so many incredible people, many that I've had the opportunity to connect with and work with as well. Tell me about some of the incredible events that you're part of.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can support our clients in getting some crazy awesome results. So I had one client who came to us. She said that she wanted to offer a $5,000 program, 2-month program. And I was like, okay, yes. And tell me more. Do you have a high ticket offer? And, do you have a way for them to work with you long term? And she's like, no, not really. This is just what I do. And I said, well, how about we actually create you a high ticket offer that they can work with you for a year, and we'll pull in all of your current clients, because that's a logical next best step. She ended up selling $2.1 million at her event.
Wow.
So that's just income wise. I've got clients that are super passionate. So not only do they want to fill their programs, but one of my clients is passionate about the ocean. And so part of her event, we included a nonprofit fundraiser that helped raise enough money to take out 9 Golden Gate bridges full of plastic out of the ocean.
Wow. Amazing. So not only financial impact, but like global impact for some of these events too.
I mean, I've got clients that have 20 attendees. Actually, the one that I just did in March, 26 viable units, ended up generating $432,000 in 2 days to help medical doctors get out of insurance-based business into cash-based business. So they actually get paid for the work that they do. Because I don't know if you realize this, but you'll have surgeons that'll go and like replace your knee, and insurance will charge, let's say, $10,000 for it. The surgeon gets like $2,000. And they're on the hook for malpractice. They're on the hook for however many years. They're on the hook, for all these different things, paying their team, this, that, and the other, follow-up appointments for $2,000, right? It's like the people that are here to take care of us and go to school forever in a day, we're not taking care of them, right? So it's like the impact there to support them is phenomenal, right? So yeah, that's just a couple.
Couple cool movements for sure. Now, biggest event you've been part of?
In terms of income generated, in terms of, okay.
Both people and income. What does that look like?
I mean, we've done a 650 person event in person. We've done with you had, what was it, like 1,000 plus people at your virtual event, I think, or at least registered. And then income-wise, 2.1 was the biggest in 3 days.
That's a big one.
Yeah, most of my clients are making multiple 6, if not $500,000 or $1 million.
Yeah, which is amazing to think in 3 days. Like a lot of, depending on the business model, right? That could be a year's worth of revenue that's getting generated, and then you just have to go to work after that, right?
Then you just love on your clients, right? Like, how amazing is that? And get them out of the pain that they're in, that you know how to support them with.
Yeah. Why do I want to do an event so bad right now, Shay?
Because, I mean, when you're in it, you're like, oh gosh, okay. But after it, I think you were saying, you're like, oh yeah, okay. Now I know why I did this.
100%. And, for me, I remember I was terrified, but knew I could present like that. And I know that I'm an expert in what I know. And so I knew those things and I was confident in those things, but I had never done a production before around me, for sure. That was a lot of stress and pressure. And without question, challenging yourself to get out of your comfort zone, you grow and you learn so much. And I know that event, that particular first event, had so much impact. Like, I still get feedback from people. I see people in different cities around the world and they're like, hey, you're the finance guy, right? And so I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe. Depends what you're asking. Oh, we were on your free event, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. you changed everything for us, and thank you. And it is amazing when you start to put together your purpose and what you're intending to do from an impact perspective, that the power of an event and sharing that out can just reach so many people in such a short period of time. So if you're looking to make that type of impact, man, oh man, there's no better way than to get on stage and to share that with an audience.
Absolutely. Like I was saying earlier, it showcases you as the expert that you are, right? Because you're in business for a reason and you're getting your clients crazy awesome results. Now we're just giving you an elevated stage to reach more people, because you don't want to be like the best hidden secret out there when you can really support and change their lives, whether it's financially for them, whether it's physically for them, trying to lose those 10 pounds, lets them run around and after their grandbabies, or, whatever it is for you. People's lives are impacted when you say yes to what it is that you are an expert in order to be on a stage and reach more people.
Yeah, it's again, terrifying, but maybe one of the most gratifying experiences that I've ever had. And I know so much, I have grown so much since that initial time, and my comfort level getting on bigger stages went way higher. My confidence in being able to continue to communicate to larger audiences has just been so much better based on that experience. And I got to tell you, though, it could have not gone that way if you don't have a team surrounding you that are protecting you from all the things that you don't know and that you don't need to know. That it could have been a different experience. So if I had have tried doing that without you, Shay, to be honest, it would have been an absolute fail. And, when you do it right, you get the right clients in, you get the right offer in, and you have marketing material for ages because of your presentations, your stage, your questions and answers, your chat. There's just such a really great opportunity to create a decade's worth of marketing. And I know for me, people ask me all the time, they say, oh, you're constantly speaking and you're on stages and you're traveling. And sometimes I am, but a lot of times when people are asking me that, I'm like, yeah, that was 6 months ago. And they just, they cut it up and they split it out, and it always constantly is new, fresh information. And, that continues. It's not just getting on the stage, it's the lasting impact that those events can have. And you and your team are absolutely magical at it.
Thank you. Well, and the people that, like, even from a couple of years ago that may not have been ready for your offer at that time, but have been a part of your world now, and now would be ready, right?
Yeah, and I get that all the time. And you're right. I get the, oh, well, you're the, the YouTube expert. Or, people always take little cracks at you like, oh, yeah, well, that's all I see is your face on social media. But it's been engaging enough that that's what you are seeing now because you've engaged in it. And you're right. A lot of times I have people who are out there who we maybe do some direct marketing and they come in, but the reason that they bit on the direct marketing was because they've been following our content and our presentations and any of those frameworks for years. And then they were like, you know what, now's the time. And it goes a really long way. Well, and like the client that made 2.1 million, right? Like she literally just used her audience that she'd been building that had low ticket offers and gave them a next step, right? So they already know, like, and trust her and love her and wanted that, but she hadn't done anything with it because she didn't know how, right? So your audience is sitting there. You can utilize an event, whether they've paid or they've been a part of your free or what have you. Use an event to essentially scoop them back up, re-engage them, and support them in the next best thing that's going to help them. 100%. So what does the future of events look like?
The future is, I feel it's going to be kind of a shift again. So we're moving back into in-person, but I think we're going to move out of the hotels and we're going to move into the different locations. So more of those theater type of things. I think we're going to move into more experiential. So retreats that we're unplugging. So it's going to be a 3-day, but it's going to be, higher level. So maybe it's 20 people going to Miraval, and, you're going to do a little bit of teaching, but it's also going to be like some white space, especially for my higher level business owners, because they're go, go, go all the time and they need that white space. So we're going to start seeing some more of that. And, the virtual won't go away. You have a lot more people coming into the virtual space feeling that they can do it, which is great. Just to, start your own kind of stage, but eventually moving into where somebody else handles it for you, I think is their next best step. But yeah, I really feel it is the shifting of how we're presenting the content and how we're supporting the audience of the credibility side, right? And the certainty side. I should actually say the certainty side, right? Yeah.
So first and foremost, I just got to say the whole event space, doing events is probably the greatest way to build authority for who you are as a brand. I've worked on building authority for the last, 5 to 7 years. Definitely had opportunities to write articles in major publications, spoke on other people's stages. Really the greatest way to really build your authority is to have an event. And I got to tell you that to the audience, of course, you know that, Shay, but to the audience who's listening, if you really want to build a brand of authority and you want to build the confidence to share that message, the greatest way for you to do that is to get on stage. And you definitely don't want to do it alone. You want to do it with a team of people who actually understand what that means, because you don't just stand up and the lights turn on and the microphone works. There's a lot more that goes behind that. So Shay, thank you for being here. If someone wanted to jump into a position of courage, host an event, or take their events to the next level, how could someone work with you and where do people find you?
If you are super excited and ready to rock and roll and you're like, Shay, I need you to put your eyeballs on my vision and what it is I want to do, the best way is to go to eventsarepowerful.com and schedule some time with me. If you're interested in learning a little bit more or being on the journey with me, maybe seeing where you're at, next steps, my suggestion would be to go to highprofitevents.com. And that way you can kind of decide where are you at in terms of our 4 different playbooks, so to speak. Do I need support in increasing my audience or my sales or my revenue streams or my budget? And there's a couple of different options for you to pick which playbook is right for you. And then if you just want to come and see us on social media and online, it's graceandeaseproductions.com or on all the socials, Shay Wheat or Grace and Ease.
So good. And thank you for today. For anyone who's really, again, looking to take their authority, their status, and their message and impact to a whole new level, this is a really great approach. So Shay, thank you so much for sharing with us today. For all of you, this has been another episode of The Wealthy Entrepreneur. I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. If something out of this today, this podcast has been valuable to you and you know that someone could be potentially impacted with it, please share this message out. We are here to make sure that we have the greatest reach and the greatest impact. If you like this episode, give us a follow, leave a comment in there. We will, again, be sharing this out in all forms, fashions, and definitely follow the podcast because we do an episode every single week. So make sure you're doing that because I would love to see you next week. And once again, thank you, Shay, for being with us. This has been the Wealthy Entrepreneur Podcast. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.